Now, as the saying goes, you can't teach speed, and that's exactly what Penn State is getting from Devonte Ross, the latest transfer portal commitment, who is a wide receiver from Troy.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Christmas, happy holidays. Thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm your host of the show, and breaking news here on Christmas Eve, Nittany Nation gets an early Christmas gift as Devonte Ross commits to Penn State out of the transfer portal. Speedster, that is the easiest way to describe him, but also veteran experience. Once upon a time was committed to Kentucky. So this was a group of five. This was a group of five receiver from Troy, but at least drew some interest from the power four here. So for Penn State, this is of course a good get because the intention is for Ross to be a starter. This isn't just a role player. This isn't just somebody that's going to. You don't do that for a player that is towards the tail end of their collegiate career. But at 6 foot, 170 pounds, not the biggest receiver in the world for Penn State, but they're going to get a speedster again. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section about Devonte Ross and if Penn State, what they still need to do with the transfer portal, because at the end of the day, I don't know that wide receiver recruiting in the transfer portal is over. And I know they just got Kyron Hudson and they got Devonte Ross. But I like the complementary ability of all of this. I like that Kyron Hudson gives you one thing, gives you a possession type of receiver, physical, bigger body. He's going to be that short to intermediate range type of receiver for Drew Aller to target. And then that's where Devonte Ross comes in, because Ross can stretch the field, can keep safeties back. So this kind of has a little bit of a domino effect here where Penn State is getting a variety of receivers that are really good at one category. So Kyron Hudson's going to give you blocking, going to give you physicality. Above all else, both of these guys give you experience. But then Devonte Ross is going to be able to stretch the defense. And Penn State, Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, as good as they've been, I feel like they could have been better over the course of their careers because defenses sell out for them. And that's what Ross is going to give you, is that he is going to give you that ability to, play action fake. Okay, we'll see what happens with Singleton and Allen, but the ground game should still be really good. The offensive line is in great shape. Penn State has a lot of running back depth, regardless of what happens to Singleton and Allen. Obviously, the preference is to get them back. I'm not trying to say otherwise. My point being is that Ross takes pressure and forces the defense to pick a poison. So now they can't stack the box. So now they can't just overly game plan for the run. And Ross is meant to be a starter. I'm going to get some more thoughts on the wide receiver room as a whole. I think this is a solid win for Marcus Hagans, because you have to go and get multiple wide receivers, and that's tough. As opposed to just getting one wide receiver, you're going out and getting commitments from multiple players. But I like the range of talent that they're getting. Kyron Hudson, I compare him to Julian Fleming. I'm not trying to make the argument that Fleming didn't have the most overwhelming season in terms of stats, but offered a lot of value. He opened up the ground game on the boundary. He gave that veteran experience. He was an avid blocker and kind of set the tone in practice. I feel like that's what Kyron Hudson gives Penn State. And then Ross is going to have that downfield ability, and Penn State's going to be able to run more 3 wide receiver sets. So this group right now of Trey Wallace, who is now turning the corner as a veteran, Devonte Ross in the slot, and then Kyron Hudson on the other boundary, that's a good group for Drew Aller to throw to, in addition to a Khalil Dinkins, in addition to a Luke Reynolds. Eventually Andrew Rapplier will come back. We'll see what happens with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. But this is the way it's shaping up with Andy Kotelnicki, and you can scheme players open. So they don't necessarily have to be as nice as it would be to get a superstar, game-changing wide receiver, because Ross ultimately won't be able to take over games. But he gives you elements to where you can do so many things, because Andy Kotelnicki is creative. So he can be a distraction, he can be a decoy, and what's interesting, and I'll talk about it more, but I also want everyone to contribute their thoughts in the live chat here, because we're gonna get your thoughts and ideas in the comment section here. But I'm interested to see what this does to the makeup of the wide receiver room, because you already had this kind of player in Amari Evans, 6 foot, a lighter wide receiver in terms of overall build. I mean, Amari Evans' name of the game is speedster. He's going to get behind the defense. So now Penn State has multiple of that. I don't think wide receiver is finished. And when I say that, I think you're also going to have eventually departures. What does this do now because Devonte Ross is brought in with the idea that he can be a starter. What does that do for Amari Evans? What does that do for Liam Clifford? What does that do for Caden Saunders? Because Penn State has 3 other. Amari Evans can play boundary, can play slot. But this is your true slot receiver. Liam Clifford is a true slot receiver. Caden Saunders is a true slot receiver. What does that do to them? Depth is great, but as players start to get to the end of their college football careers, they're going to have to make a decision as far as what they're going to do here. I like the way that this group is trending. You have 3 capable players: Trey Wallace, Devonte Ross, and a Kyron Hudson. All veteran experience. They can win select one-on-one matchups, and you have Andy Kotelnicki. Who's going to be able to open up the offense by doing a variety of different things with these 3 playmakers. I think Tyser Denmark eventually is going to break out sooner rather than later. We're waiting on Denmark's ability. We've seen it. It's now about, for Penn State, retaining that depth, because I do wonder with an Evans, with a Clifford, with a Saunders, what that does for the team. The wide receivers, though, at least the first 3 starters, the way that it projects, and it's not going to be decided there. So Devonte Ross is brought in with the idea. Same thing with Kyron Hudson. They're not guaranteed starting spots. They're guaranteed the competition with the favorability that they are going to start. But I think we're going to learn a lot of things in spring football, in spring training camp, because there is a second transfer portal window. So depending on who wins and loses those battles, who knows who's going to enter the transfer portal. So that's my point, is that the wide receiver room is not finished. And it could have more entries, more additions, could also have some departures that we're not expecting as well. So we will see what this does. But going back to Ross, he gives you that explosive playability. A player that is going to, as I've mentioned, draw safety attention, stretch the defense. You can't teach speed. So a cornerback in the slot better be able to go toe-to-toe, and then that's where that takes that extra defender away, because how many players are going to be able to keep up with Devonte Ross? Not many. I do think, I mean, he's a smaller build wide receiver, but you're not going to ask him to block. You're not going to ask him to take on a linebacker and to chip and to do all these things that he is not necessarily, those aren't his strengths. But he has 1,600 career yards. He clearly has that big playability, because what I find interesting is that in his career, 14 touchdowns. He has 14 touchdown receptions over the course of 3 seasons. And he has eligibility for 1 more season. And for Penn State, you're getting veteran experience, somebody that was recruited by the SEC, and creates competition at the end of the day, at the very minimum. We'll see what happens now with the wide receiver room. Again, looking for your questions, comments in the live chat. We'll take a short time out, and when we return, get your thoughts. Talk about what Penn State could still do in the transfer portal. That's what we're all interested in here. That's coming up next on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's live show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. You can bet on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score, but there's more than that. You can bet on passing yards, rushing yards, catches, tackles made, field goals made even. There are so many different bets you can make over at FanDuel.com. And if we look over at FanDuel, you can see the lines for the Fiesta Bowl. Penn State versus Boise State. Penn State is a 10.5-point favorite, minus 420 on the money line. If you're thinking Boise State, plus 320 on the money line. The total is set at 52.5. If you like those lines, you can bet them over at FanDuel.com. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And let's welcome all of you into the portal chatter here. Thank you so much for joining the live show on Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas Eve. This news happens right before I get in the middle of my plans, so kind of convenient timing here, but thank you for joining the show. What a great get Devonte Ross should be. 1,043 yards on 76 receptions, a long touchdown of 98 yards and 11 TDs. That's what I mean. So he is a threat to score at any given time, and that's also reassuring because for a player that gets those big plays, that has the big chunk plays, the explosive plays, which is why Andy Kotelnicki was brought in the first place, it's a domino effect. Do you see what Andy Kotelnicki has done for Penn State's program, for Penn State's offense? That you can get so much out of the players that you have. Yes, a superstar wide receiver would be nice, and I don't think Penn State would turn a superstar wide receiver away. If one happens to be in the portal that is a fit, they are going to go get them, but it's not as much of a need anymore. This can be a strategic want, if you will. But Andy Kotelnicki can get creative because of the ability of a Kyron Hudson, because of the ability of a Devonte Ross and a Trey Wallace. And that's not to say Amari Evans, a healthy Caden Saunders, right? A Liam Clifford. But I wonder now, because those guys want to start too, you do need depth. Penn State isn't just committed, hey, we have 3 wide receivers, we're not going to play anybody else. So we will see what happens there. Watch his long touchdown catch against Iowa. He can get separation. Absolutely. And when you have a coordinator like Andy Kotelnicki that can scheme that up, it becomes even easier. Who's doing this, I know, against the type of competition. It's faster in the Big Ten. It's more physical in the Big Ten. I'm eager to see what his release off the line of scrimmage is against bigger, faster cornerbacks. That's going to be interesting to see how Devonte Ross, it's a competition. He's brought in with the idea that he's one of the starting 3 wide receivers, and that 3 wide receiver look, 4 wide receiver look, who knows? Andy Kotelnicki has said that he will do whatever it takes. 3 tight ends, 3, 4, 5 wide receivers, whatever it takes to win, Penn State will run it. Hopefully he can spread the field for us. Yes, he can. Junior or a senior. So he has not used his red shirt. He was in the class of 2021. Therefore, he has 1 more year of eligibility. 2025 would be his final season. However, I do want to point out, I don't want to speak anything into existence here, but he does have the red shirt available that this could be a 2-year thing if things don't turn out the right way for Devonte Ross. He doesn't, but the intention is he's probably going to play this season. Hopefully a piece needed to be able to take the top off the defense. And that's what's interesting because Penn State already had that. That's what Devonte Ross does, but Amari Evans is already that. So is this a better version of Amari Evans? That's why I bring him up a ton, because Penn State already has a player that's comparable there. Excited about big play potential, and it just opens up other big plays. That's what it does. Devonte Ross opens up the door for Trey Wallace and Kyron Hudson and the running backs, most importantly. This is so helpful for the ground game. Penn State is stacking up. You know, the more the merrier, right? Sometimes quantity beats quality. And I'm not saying that any of these guys aren't good. They're playing Division I football. But don't get me wrong when I say that, you know, Eric Singleton Jr. or the likes of a Casey Concepcion, who's still uncommitted. Like I said, that's what I was alluding to, is that Concepcion is still drawing interest from Penn State. He's still interested in Penn State, and Penn State is still obviously interested in him. And they wouldn't not take a commitment from Concepcion. That becomes extremely unlikely. I'm saying extremely, like I might give it a 1% chance, but there were conversations before Devonte Ross. From what I was hearing is that it wasn't completely over. It was a long shot, but it wasn't completely over. And We'll see. But I think Penn State, at least for the moment, is going to be content here. But don't think this cements anything. Just don't think that all of this cements where the wide receiver room is, because the transfer portal window has not closed. It's not closed until December 28th, and playoff teams get an extension as well. And then there's the spring transfer portal window. This is to see how competitions play out for spring ball. That's what all of this solves. Devonte Ross has not earned anything. Kyron Hudson has not earned anything. Julian Fleming is the only player that is vacating a spot, meaning that Trey Wallace, Amari Evans, Liam Clifford, Caden Saunders, Tyzer Denmark all get a fair fight for snap counts and the starting job. So we will see. There are going to be wide receivers leaving through the portal. Yeah, with addition, you're going to have subtractions. It's kind of, I liken it to the Keandre Lambert-Smith situation where Julian Fleming was brought in, and Keandre Lambert-Smith went from being the number one option in a Mike Yurcich offense to maybe the number 3 option in an Andy Kotelnicki offense, hypothetically speaking. He would have just had to compete. So that's a strange dichotomy there, where you go from being the guy to a timeshare in a sense. I mean, good for KLS at the end of the day. This conversation isn't about KLS, but the situation is going to be like that. When you bring in players, it's going to alienate others. And that's kind of more or less what the Julian Fleming move did back in the day for Keandre Lambert-Smith. This is going to have a ripple effect in the wide receiver room. Would like to add a bigger physical wide receiver as well. Malachi Fields would have been nice. From what we've kind of gathered is that Notre Dame made an aggressive. Notre Dame needs receivers just as much as Penn State does. I know there was the Marcus Higgins connection with Fields committing to Virginia, and that was his former wide receivers coach. But if you have an uncertain future in the NFL, I don't blame players for going and getting NIL money presently in college football, maxing out their eligibility, transferring to where it is going to benefit them most. Because as we saw with, for example, so this isn't even so much about Fields, but the Tulane quarterback that transferred to Duke, the reported, CBS Sports put this out, that he is making what is to believed $4 million a year. He's never going to make that in the NFL unless he plays a 10, 12-year career, because that is not an NFL quarterback, but he's getting that security. He is going to get $8 million now by being a quality college football quarterback, and then future in the NFL be darned. So this is where college football is changing. So you have to adapt with NIL or you're going to get left behind. And if Notre Dame so then circle it back, if Notre Dame made a bigger push for Malachi Fields, because everyone's future is uncertain, the present is certain. And if you can make millions of dollars, now I'm not sure what Notre Dame offered to Malachi Fields at the end of the day, but it certainly seems like it was more than what Penn State was going to offer. Bottom line is that I don't blame players when you're not guaranteed anything in the NFL that you're going to take the money now. That's what we're seeing. Would be great if either Singleton or Katron came back, but would be great. It would be great, but I'll take at least one. I mean, obviously everybody would like to see another year of the dynamic duo. Nicholas Singleton has NFL prospects. So does Katron Allen. Singletons are better than Katron Allen. That's the truth. That's not a hot take. That's not my opinion. I believe that Singleton is the better complete running back just because of terms of what he offers you in athleticism. But Katron has a lot of other intangibles, the vision, right? I think ball carrier vision by Katron Allen. So if you could merge the two together and have Nicholas Allen or Katron Singleton, that would be the most dynamic back in the world. Maybe that's what Saquon Barkley, that's Saquon Barkley, right? But it's interesting to me that they have traits that the other one does in Singleton with the speed, and then Allen with his ball carrier vision and the way that he's able to cut and everything else. Singleton is the more complete back, and he's going to have better prospects in the NFL. We'll see. Maybe Allen is able to refine his agility a little bit. I feel like you can train that to an extent. You are what you are as an athlete, but it's not to say that Katron could never get faster, could never get quicker. If they both go off to the NFL, it would not shock me. There have been rumors, and they've been reported in the past. Look at interviews with Nicholas Singleton, that other agents and schools and programs around college football have tried to coerce them to enter the transfer portal. So just be aware that if Singleton decides to come back, there is going to be an SEC team that is going to try to say to Katron Allen, come make some money and go in the portal and back channel. That is a real thing. That is a real possibility. Or the inverse. They try to do it with Singleton because they did try to do it with Singleton. I'm not saying that it's just Katron Allen that's going to have the allure of money at another program. Singleton dealt with it too. And he admitted it in an interview. And Pat Kraft and James Franklin have expressed their anger with that. So that is a distinct possibility. It's not even just about the NFL. It's about programs that are going to try to do everything in their power to go get a starting running back in an Allen or a Singleton when Penn State has them both. I lost my spot in my comment section. Let's see. Wait, is Trey Wallace and Harrison Wallace the same person? So Harrison Wallace has one more year left, right? Yes, that is the same player. Harrison, Trey, Wallace. Harrison Wallace the third. So he goes by Trey. For anybody that didn't know, that's actually, I guess that's not common knowledge. I could call him Harrison Wallace, but I feel like that's longer to say. It's easier to say Trey Wallace, but he is Harrison Wallace the third, and that's why he goes by Trey. At least that's the understanding that's the impression that I have. Solid return man, a big piece that he brings with him. So yes, he is also a punt returner as well. I think Penn State's in a good spot with punt return because Zion Tracy showed some ability as a young player, as a young returner from this season. We'll see what happens with Caden Saunders. Caden Saunders was supposed to be the starting punt returner, but I like what they have found in a Zion Tracy. And then there's Josiah Brown. There is also, who's blanking? Tyseer Denmark, blanking my mind for a moment. Penn State is pretty set at punt returner depth. But I like what Zion Tracy gave, but we'll see. Devonte Ross will certainly compete. I don't think Zion Tracy, because he didn't return anything for a touchdown, so there is still going to be open competition. All right, we'll keep the conversation going. We got to take one more break here, but we'll get some more of your thoughts. Talk about other transfer portal needs that Penn State can go and get because Ohio State is being competitive and you got to keep up with the Buckeyes, right? We'll talk about it more on the other side of this break. And today's episode is also brought to you by Gametime. There's nothing better than the holiday season than to go to a live event, especially with friends and family, because that's how you create those types of core memories. And Gametime is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means bringing people together at those live events, and the experience becomes that much better. It's also the perfect last-second gift if you needed some other gift ideas. Now, Gametime has a feature called Gametime Picks, and that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live and live events in general even easier than before. Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on incredible seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. And let's look over at Gametime. So you can go to the Gametime app or go to gametime.co, and I have gametime.co pulled up on my browser here, and you can see the Gametime picks sorted already for the Fiesta Bowl, Penn State versus Boise State. They got a super deal. Main end zone, section 122, row 23, all in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. $254 per ticket. That is with fees included. If you're just looking for the lowest price on tickets, there's one for terrace level, section 439, row 22, all in pricing, $233. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account. Redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. We'll wrap up with some more portal chatter. Also get your thoughts from the comment section. And I lose my spot in the comment section every time I go to break here too. So he is going to be vital this year in the wide receiver room. Yes, Devonte Ross, I think, gives you, you can't teach speed. Ideally, you would like to keep both Amari Evans and Devonte Ross, but I think there's going to be more or less of a competition here as far as who is going to be the starting speedster wide receiver, if you will. There still seems that they have a fundamental problem in getting receivers the ball. Coach K needs to find new ways to get wide receivers the football and let them make plays. I beg to differ. I understand what you're trying to say. But Penn State's offense has been top 10 in the country in yards per play, and they've been a top 10 passing offense in yards per completion, yards per attempt. So this is a major step up. Andy Kotelnicki is doing everything that he can. Is it perfect? No, but scoring 37 points in the Big Ten championship game, being able to get into shootouts with opposing teams and coming out on the winning side of things, right? Penn State's offense didn't do that last year. They didn't win any games. So I have little to no complaints about an Andy Kotelnicki offense that is continuing to play to his strengths where he needs just puzzle pieces. Okay, all-star wide receivers, superstar wide receivers are great, guys that can take over games. But if you have this collection of, hey, he brings you speed, hey, he brings you physicality. I mean, Kyron Hudson doesn't drop passes. And from what we're seeing, neither does Devonte Ross. But Devonte Ross is going to draw double teams by proxy because of the speed. And then that opens things up for Trey Wallace or whomever else, really. Liam, you could name even the backup wide receivers. There's going to be a competition. But Kyron Hudson, Clifford, any of the wide receivers, Tyser Denmark. So that's what it's going to do. You can scheme these things open, and that's what Andy Kotelnicki has been great at, is maximizing players' ability with the scheme. Drew Allar's got the arm, right? If Devonte Ross happens to be the starting slot receiver, because I am not guaranteeing it, but that was the purpose for bringing him in. Let's say it's Amari Evans. Let's say it's Devonte Ross. Let's say it's Josiah Brown. And Josiah Brown was brought in with the intention of being a long-term playmaker at wide receiver because he has the speed too. But yes, Devonte Ross was brought in for the reason of starting ability. But Drew Allar's going to be able, I think that could be, Ross stays healthy for a full 12-game regular season, could easily have double-digit touchdowns in an Andy Kotelnicki offense. I feel like any speedster wide receiver. It just happens to be Devonte Ross in this case. Lose my spot again. Katron should come back. He could be even better next year. We'll see what happens at running back. Nicholas Singleton is not a guarantee to the NFL. That is an ongoing conversation from what I've heard. Is that it's a 50-50 thing. That he could come back to Penn State for one season. He could go off to the NFL early. If he does go to the NFL, I think it makes a lot of sense for Katron Allen to come back and be the bell cow, if you will, the all-purpose running back, the 3-down running back, and then ease Corey Smith and Quentin Martin and see if you can get Cam Wallace back too. But the running back depth is in a great spot, and then you just added the 2 players from the class of 2025. But I like the idea of Katron Allen coming back for one more season if Singleton does go to the NFL. And then you have Martin and Corey Smith basically being the 2A, 2B running back in a sense. Where does Gonzalez fit in? Yes, Peter Gonzalez. I like Peter Gonzalez as a prospect. He's dealing with an injury, long-term injury, so we'll see how he recovers. I can't have an opinion on him. Just hopefully his recovery goes well and that he's available back next season. He is a bigger wide receiver, taller wide receiver. He would be a boundary type of guy, just to give you his player profile. If we do need somebody stronger, same thing with the spring transfer portal window, we can find somebody. And that's what I want people to understand, is that the wide receiver room is fluid. Because of the transfer portal is fluid. Anybody can leave. Anybody can enter from Penn State, from another school. Penn State might be in a situation where they finish spring football season. They don't really like what they have, even at wide, that's not just subjective to wide receiver. That can be at offensive line, even though I think they're in a great spot. Offensive line has a lot of depth. But let's say defensive back, for example, or linebacker. There's a linebacker in the portal that makes sense that they have a previous relationship with. They will go and talk to them. I just want to beat Ohio State and Michigan. Would be nice. I want a national title. Honestly, the loss, and that's what I said originally, went all the way back to the Ohio State game, was that if Penn State wins a national title, I don't care if they lost to Ohio State by 1 million in the regular season. That kind of cures everything. Easier said than done, but Penn State has as good of a chance as anybody else. Yes, Oregon. I know that they lost to Oregon and Ohio State, but honestly, the 3 best teams in this playoff bracket are Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State. They're all from the Big Ten. Texas, Georgia, Notre Dame. It's down to those 6. I don't see Arizona. I'm sorry. Arizona State and Boise State do not have a chance. It's those 6. But I think Georgia has its weaknesses. I think Penn State would beat Georgia. I think Penn State can beat Notre Dame as well. They're not overwhelmed, but the time that they experience mismatches are against Ohio State and Oregon because of what they had at wide receiver. That's Penn State's kryptonite, is an elite group of wide receivers. All the other teams that they are going to face do not have that. Therefore, I think Penn State's a better football team than Notre Dame and then Georgia. And then let the chips fall where they may in a neutral site, in a national championship game. One score game against Ohio State, one score game against Oregon. It's not like they were blown out. It's not like they were and that was an overwhelming loss. Penn State is right there. I think they're the third best team. And Texas, maybe a 3A, 3B. I think Texas would be right there. That would be an interesting matchup, Texas versus Penn State in the national championship. I think those two teams are as even as it gets, but they would need to get there. Is Khalil Dinkins a senior? Is he coming back? Yes. He and Luke Reynolds would be the 1A, 1B at tight end. They're going to run a lot of two tight end sets. Luke Reynolds is developing nicely. And Khalil Dinkins would be a redshirt senior. He would be a redshirt senior. Is Wallace staying? It's technically not a guaranteed, but I imagine a 3 wide receiver set, I can't see him being a backup. Trey Wallace has been the number 1 wide receiver for Penn State this season. He's performed admirably enough because it's been the Tyler Warren show. And then you have Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. But in more of an offense that is going to demand more from wide receivers, that target share is going to naturally increase. So I can't see why Trey Wallace would enter the portal unless there's a team that just makes, again, that back channel. Hey, here's this agent for this SEC program, right? I don't know. I can't predict that. But in terms of what Penn State's offering him presently, I can't see him leaving. He would be a starter in next year's offense. I don't see that. These playoff wins are really good for the portal and recruiting. It certainly helps. Because the evidence is right there. You have tangible proof. Tez Johnson 2.0. Well, I won't go exactly that far, but Tez Johnson's more of an all-around playmaker. I feel like Devonte Ross is to an extent. He is a deep threat playability. His strongest suit is deep threat playability. Now Tez Johnson has that and then some. So we'll see if Penn State can do those things with Andy Kotelnicki's offense where they create some more for Devonte Ross, but he's not that. And there's a reason that he's been at Troy for the past few seasons. I mean, this was a 3-star portal wide receiver. So he's a home run threat in terms of what he can give you in offensive playmaking, but he's not that home run splash out of the portal. But Penn State recruited him for a reason. Same thing with Kyron Hudson. They recruited him for a reason. I think there were 30 other schools that showed interest in Kyron Hudson from what I saw the reports, and they could have gone elsewhere. They chose Penn State. It will be interesting to see what ultimately happens here going forward with the team. Just kind of cap it all off here. Portal's not closed. Portal's not finished. Names could still go in at any time. Penn State is targeting defensive tackles. There's JVR Suggs that they're still going after. They're trying to get, I said his name wrong in the previous live show, so hopefully he doesn't see that, but Kendall Daniels out of Oklahoma State. I think that would be a massive get for Penn State because that is the key to a Tom Allen defense. Tom Allen likes to have that hybrid linebacker safety type of player, 6'4", 200 pounds. He's a mismatch for offenses. He has the ability where he can cover tight ends, he can cover wide receivers, he can cover running backs, right? He's not boxed into, don't match him up with a tight end because of the size ability. He's 6'4". I think Kendall Daniels solves a lot of problems. It's not even problems, but gives you so many luxuries. So Penn State's defense isn't a problem outside of the defensive line depth. They need more guys at defensive line, whether that's, we'll see if they go get another defensive end. The way it projects is that you hopefully get Denine and a Sutton back. You have Anai White. I think those are your 2 starters if everything goes well. Zane Durant, if everything goes well, is your 1 starter. And then Alonzo Ford coming back from injury. That is your other starter. JVR Suggs would be played some, not significant amount of time, but played some at LSU. SEC defensive tackle. He said he had a great visit. But he would be a depth player. He would not be a guaranteed starter unless something goes wrong with Alonzo Ford, and I hope that's not the case. Wooden-esque. I don't want to jinx anything, but he is coming off of a long-term injury. So Suggs would be beneficial, gives you another veteran playmaker because you're losing so much. You were losing so much, and hopefully Penn State does not lose more. Zane Durant and Denai Dennis Sutton are not guaranteed to come back until they announce that they come back. Speaking of players that are returning, Zach Wheatley coming back is massive for Penn State. Back end of the defense. And that's why they're recruiting a player like a Kendall Daniels, because Tom Allen is committed to more or less of this 4-2-5. Depends what you classify Daniels as. Depends what you say he is, if he's a true linebacker, if he's a safety. But that hybrid player that just allows you to put your best 11 players on the field. You can have Zach Wheatley still play that free safety. And that is huge because he could have gone off to the NFL. But they're losing KJ Winston. They are losing Jalen Reed. So Dejon Lane, a lot of responsibility is going to be on him. Is he going to be ready to start next season? Because I think that's the favorite to start at that other safety spot right now. True freshman Dejon Lane, we've seen him increase his playing time a little bit more. And they could move other guys back to safety. What about Zion Tracy? What about Cam Miller? So they have options, but follow what Penn State is doing. Actions speak louder than words. I can sit here and say that they can make do with the Zion Tracy or Cam Miller making a position change. There's a reason they're going after a playmaker like Kendall Daniels from Oklahoma State. Look him up. You will get a live stream reaction from me like never before if they happen to land Daniels. So hopefully he doesn't go somewhere else. And this news is so quick that I wonder, as I talk about this in real time, that they do make these decisions. So hopefully nothing else in the meantime. But I think that's where I'll wrap it up here. Got a lot of great contributions from all of you in the live chat. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the support. That is what I am grateful this holiday Christmas season. Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you for the support, allowing me this platform to talk about Penn State football in addition to basketball and wrestling as well on this show, and getting the chance to react to a big transfer portal move. So this is a win for Penn State. Anything and everything is helpful at wide receiver, but this does not cement anything. The portal window is not closed. There's still a spring transfer portal window. What this does is it gives Penn State more options to look at spring football camp battles. And the idea is that Devonte Ross should win and be one of those starters alongside a Trey Wallace and a Kyron Hudson. And it just helps Drew Aller and Andy Kotelnicki out at the end of the day. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays. We're going to have more content about Penn State football, basketball, and wrestling on the way. Probably take a little bit of break on Christmas Day. Like I said, this happened before my plans here on Christmas Eve, so I'm glad I got to chat with all of you. Have a safe, healthy, and happy holiday with all of your friends and family. Make sure you spend it with your loved ones, and I'll be talking to all of you very soon here on Locked On Nittany Lions.